It's the Sports Peninsula Podcast. Coming up, we're continuing our coverage of the draft prospects for the upcoming 2025 NFL Draft being held in Green Bay this April. In this episode, we'll discuss the prospects at wide receiver. This is traditionally a deep position group that generates a lot of day one buzz. The Detroit Lions could add depth to their group via the draft, but the wide receiver room is relatively full now, with nearly everyone back from the 2024 season. This year's wide receiver prospect group is deep, but do we have any legitimate superstars coming out this year? We'll discuss that and preview the top prospects next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula Podcast. My name is Dave Jasinski-Drew. I'm joined by Coach Andy Scheel. Coach, we're talking wide receivers today, and like we said in the intro, it's always a loaded class. But it's interesting, and I wanted your opinion on this before we jump into the actual prospects. Is do you think there is a superstar or two in this group?
I think there's a definite superstar. I don't know if he is fully a wide receiver. I think he's going to be a player that plays both ways. I think that's a superstar that's affiliated with this group. And by the way, we won't be really featuring him too much today. Well, we'll talk about him a little bit later. I think there's people with some potential. I don't think that's a slam dunk. No, I do not think that's a slam dunk. I think there's potential for there to be guys that are maybe star potential, Pro Bowl potential that will, feature maybe as a dark horse, or we won't feature at all today. And I think there's, some guys that we will feature today that might be a little bit more sizzle than steak. This is, a position group that is now so important to this league. This is the running backs of the 80s and 90s. This is, receivers, kind of took that baton during the 90s. And by the 2000s, they were the kind of the featured skill position of the draft. And that's still the same, today. So, I mean, there are some great players, some guys that very likely are going to play in a Pro Bowl someday. There are some guys that are very likely to be high fantasy picks someday. But that being said, is there a superstar? I think there is, but I'm not sure he's a full-time wide receiver.
Yeah, I hear you on that, Coach. And the way I look at these prospects this year, like the top ones we're going to talk about, they have super high ceilings, but their floor is a little lower. There's I wouldn't call it boom or bust, but it could be. Yeah, it could be maybe. I don't want to overstate it, because I think these guys are really talented, but it's just a little different than what we see. But as far as depth goes, yeah, you're gonna talk about 20 right here in a minute, and there's plenty more where that came from too. I mean, for UDFAs and guys that are gonna go in round 7 even. But briefly, but let's talk about the Lions. They did get Tim Patrick back. They've still got JMO. They've got St. Brown locked up long term. They've got Khalif Raymond for a couple years now. Their room's now pretty full. Probably not likely they draft a wide receiver, but I'm not going to rule anything out. What do you think?
Hey, no, especially when they are pooling together at certain spots in the draft, and you can get some great value because we will likely be moving on from some wide receivers here of substance in the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. We just can't pay them all, Drew. We just can't pay them all. We have to keep investing in this offensive line. We have to keep investing on the defensive side. Those are the things in this next run that we are really going to kind of roll with. It's with Goff as the quarterback, it's going to be played through this O-line and the defense. And that's what's going to get us the Lombardi here. So, who would that be? Well, I think, without addressing any elephants or gorillas in the room, that probably would be JMO. So would we be, if you would see a guy like JMO sometime, you're not drafting JMO. JMO doesn't just grow on trees. He's a one of a kind, and he's a very unique guy, and he is going to deserve to get paid. And in a perfect world, it would be right here. But it looks like he could be a guy that could be tough to retain just by the market value of receivers these days. So if you look at it that way, Drew, could we be looking earlier this year, even at 28. Well, if you got an exceptional player that could be a starter next year, maybe.
Yep, I won't rule anything out with Brad Holmes, but I would, the odds tell me, they're going to address the trend.
Right. No, yeah, I think they're going other places. Yes.
Yeah, but yep, you never know. Let's talk about these top 20 guys, Coach. It's a deep group, and there's some star power there. Let's talk about them.
Yeah. At number 20, we have Kobe Hudson from Central Florida. At 19, Nick Nash of San Jose State, and at 18, Kyle Williams from Washington State. 17, Ty Felton from Maryland. Now that's a guy that can climb the ladder and get over the top of a defense. He's got some burner speed. He is our number 17 prospect. Another guy that's long and tall, a guy can get down the field and make plays down the field is Pat Bryant out of Illinois at 16. A guy that has been mentioned as someone that the Lions have scouted is our number 15 rated wide receiver, Torrey Horton out of Colorado State. And at 14 is Tez Johnson out of Oregon. At 13 is Savion Williams out of TCU, a guy that lined up at running back quite a bit this year too, Drew. And I think you're going to be featuring him as the dark horse. It's going to be interesting to hear more about him. In at 12 is Jalen Noel out of Iowa State, and 11 is the first of a couple of Texas Longhorn wide receivers, Isaiah Bond, in at 11. At 10, our second dark horse, the guy that reminds a lot of people of a guy by the name of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Xavier Restrepo out of Miami, the U. He's in at 10. At 9, Jalen Royals out of Utah State. And into our featured group starting at 8 is the great Jack Beck out of TCU via LSU. We'll be talking about him in depth. Jaden Higgins is a guy that has been talked about with the Lions. He is another one of those Iowa State Cyclones that is in the top 20 at wide receiver. In at number 6 is Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, a guy that also some people say that has intrigued the Lions with some of his skill set. At number 5, Alec Iumaner out of Stanford, another big, tall guy that I know some people have linked to the Lions. Hey, number 4, Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. They haven't talked about many Ohio State Buckeyes this year, have we, Drew? Talked about a ton of them. They were just like Michigan last year.
Yeah.
We were talking about those Texas Longhorns. One at number 3 is Matthew Golden, a burner, punt returner, kick returner, wide receiver out of Texas. And at number 2 is Mr. Everything, Luther Burden III out of Missouri. He was a 5-star, number 1 overall prospect at one time. And in at number 1 on our board, for the sake of talking about 20 different wide receivers, is the wide receiver out of Arizona, Teteroa McMillan. He is listed as our number 1 guy, highly talented player. Going to be talking about him in depth. But really, Drew, in my mind's eye, and I am not trying to speak for everybody, you put a ton of time and effort into this, but I think you somewhat concur. The real number 1 wide receiver on this list is Travis Hunter out of Colorado. He's the best wide receiver in the country, and he was. That's the Biletnikoff winner right there. That's him making a play against Colorado State as a wide receiver. Oh, by the way, folks, he's being listed as a cornerback in this draft, and is going to be drafted for the defensive end, a defensive side of the ball. I know I'm swinging for the fences here, Drew, and I'm always swinging for the fences, but this is the best player in the draft.
Yeah, he is.
This is the best player in the football draft. We've talked about hundreds of different prospects. This, folks, is the best player in the draft. We won't talk about him today. We're going to start talking about Teteroa McMillan, Drew. And, for the sake of it, you're going to hear us talk about Travis Hunter when we talk about him. We'll talk about some wide receiver clips with him. But let's talk about the receivers that we do have on this board. Give these kids a good rundown here, Drew. Tell us about Teteroa McMillan.
Teteroa McMillan, also known as T-Mac.
Yeah, the broadcasters like that nickname.
They certainly do. So, if he seems to like it too, we'll stick with that. T-Mac's the University of Arizona, like you said, Coach, 6'5", 219-pound junior. You got to love the size. Native of Hawaii, actually. He prepped with Mason Graham at Servite High School in California. That's big-time program. 2-time All-American, 2024 All-Big 12, 2023 All-Pac 12 wide receiver. Coach, 63% target catch rate. That's outstanding. 341 career targets, 213 career receptions, 3,400 plus career receiving yards, and oh, by the way, 26 career receiving touchdowns for the junior. Tetaroa McMillan. Coach, so much to like about him. Break him down. What do you like?
Yeah, he's your Nico Collins, Drake London, big, long X wide receiver. He's your big, tall guy, but he can line up everywhere. He can line up at Y. He can line up in the slot. You can move him around. He's alignment versatile. So he wasn't just always out wide on the line at that X wide receiver. He bounced around and moved around. So he produced out of all of those different alignments. So this is a guy that you're going to be able to plug in and play, and he is going to be somebody you're not going to have to take off the field necessarily in certain packages. You can move him around. With JMO until last year, those first couple of years, well, he was injured so much, but we'd flat out take him off the field at times for certain alignments. Wouldn't do it. Well, last year you started to see that change, and he was out there, and here comes the 1,000 yards and the bigger touchdown production and all that. Tetaroa McMillan will be able to do that from day one. He can be able to stay out there and align in different spots. He was a red zone machine for the Wildcats. He caught a lot of touchdowns in the red zone. He's got good body control, really positions himself well, especially at high point and 50%, situations. He's very technical and nuanced with his movements and in his route movements. And he's a tough tackle. He gets himself some yards after catch. That's what yak, means that, for folks that are unfamiliar with that term. He's a tough guy to tackle at 6'5", 219, you could about imagine. He's got top end ball skills. He high points and he can track that ball. And that's very important. It's going to be very important to him because you're going to get to a couple of things that he doesn't do so well, that those tracking skills are going to be important. He's been a zone killer, but he really understands pockets and passing windows, and he gets there, and he does a great job of really manning in those spots and soft spots of zones. He's got the largest catch radius in the draft. That puts him up there, and he's got a drop rate of less than 4. So, 361 or 318 targets, whatever that was, he only dropped 4% of those balls that were ever thrown his way that were catchable. So this is a guy with great hands. You can see some pretty phenomenal one-handed, focus grab right there against New Mexico State. Drew, he has potentially dropped a little bit in some of his draft stock. What are some of those things that have popped up for Tetaroa?
Yeah, he doesn't. When we say he doesn't possess high-end speed, twitch, or quickness, I lean it more towards the twitch and quickness. He did show he's got some straight line speed.
There's some breaking away and scoring long touchdowns.
Yeah, but he's not twitchy. He's not. You wouldn't call him quick. He'll get you downfield. He's gonna outstride you, and he's so strong. Look at that. He's got a defender off with one arm, and he's catching the ball. It's a beautiful thing, but he kind of makes that look easy at times because he's so big and strong, and he's put together well. He's not awkward. He handles his size really well, and that's important to be when you're that tall. But he's going to struggle to be a top-end vertical threat because you got to be twitchy and quick off the line in order to get there in the NFL, and that he's got to work on. You're either twitchy or not, but his quickness, he's got to get. I'm sure he'll get coached up on that. And Coach, you've had young David through speed camps for a long time, and they figure that stuff out, don't they?
They sure do.
Yeah, so
I can work on it.
Exactly, but he's going to have to. He's not plug and play in that regard, so he's going to have to work on it. Far too reliant on mismatching with his length. You can get away with that against some programs. Every NFL team now has corners that are pretty much 6'2", 6'3", and strong. It's just he's going to have to he's going to have to be multifaceted, and he's capable of it, no question. But on tape, you can see he definitely relies on that, so he's got to work on it. Physical cornerbacks have bested him at times right at the line. So again, that's where the quickness is going to have to come in. And if he can get quick with that frame and his breakaway speed, he's going to be special. But he needs to become a pro route running machine. He's hard press coverage could be a problem for him too. So again, he's got to get stronger on the line. Is athleticism a concern? Well, when you talk about those things, to an extent it is. And Coach, I think that's why I really like Teteroa McMillan. I think he has the high, other than Travis Hunter, of course, he has the highest ceiling of this group. But the floor could be something like, in, the jury's still out on Quentin Johnston. We thought a lot of him, similar size. And really, and I even talk about, Corey Davis from the Broncos, as high as he was drafted. There's a lot there, and a lot's got to happen to really realize that potential. But your thoughts, Coach, before we move on?
Separation. Is Teteroa McMillan going to be able to consistently create separation for himself, or is he not going to be able to? If he's able to, he is going to be somebody that's going to have a nice career. He's going to be a Nico Collins type football player. He's going to be really, really good. If he does not, he could be in that Davis, Sammy Watkins kind of group of players that played a lengthy period of time per se, but never produced at the rate in which they kind of thought of. He's 6'9", 219 pounds. I like his chances. He is not very vertical fast, and guys with his type of athletic kind of response and those numbers, typically you don't see drafted in the top 15 picks. But you know what? This year is a different year. Teteroa McMillan is definitely going to be drafted in the first round. I'm not exactly sure where. Probably sooner rather than later. But I think, it's safe to say in the top 20 picks. I think so. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Coach. And top 20, yeah, definitely. Top 10, maybe. Maybe. And that's, we'll see. But it would definitely be. It's rare where if a receiver isn't taken in the top 10 in the NFL draft, but it has happened 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So we shall see. Who's our number 2 guy, Coach?
Got Luther Burden III out of Missouri, 5'11", 205-pound junior. He's number 2, and he comes from St. Louis, Missouri. He was a 5-star prospect. He actually prepped in the state of – he's from St. Louis, Missouri, but he prepped at the famous East St. Louis High School in Illinois. East St. Louis is a suburb of St. Louis, just across the river on the other side. 4.47 40, 2023 All-American, 2-time All-SEC player, 2022 freshman All-American, 2,500 plus career all-purpose yards, 26 career touchdowns between rushing and receiving, and a 70% target catch rate. So he lined up in the slot a little bit more, and those guys do have a higher target catch rate. But I tell you what, they threw the ball to him an awful lot, and he came down with it 70% of the time. And that's without throwing the ball to anybody else. That's pretty good, Drew.
That is awesome. There's a lot to like here about Luther Burden, the third, Coach, and I'll break it down. Versatile and physical offensive weapon. He again, like Coach said, he lined up in the slot a lot, but he can go outside too. He can make it happen. Just dynamic receiver. He has some Deebo Samuel to his profile. He's kind of got that look. Now Samuel's about 220 now, but if I'm not mistaken, I think he was very similar in size here. Maybe he might have been 210 when he came out. When he was drafted, I believe, out of South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. So is that correct, Coach? Yeah. So, he's got that kind of look and that versatility. He can definitely move. Tremendous twitch and explosiveness. Now we're talking about a very quick, athletic guy right from the hop, right off the snap. Wins at the line of scrimmage, and again, see that there it is. A 5.09% drop rate. Not bad at all. Very good. I mean, not McMillan's 4%, but it's outstanding. He's a very physical blocker. You got to love that. Yak extraordinaire. If you give him any space, he's going to get you. It's rare on tape, at least last season, where the first tackler got him. So Luther Burden's very, very elusive. He's an outstanding punt returner. That's right there. I mean, that's just money in the bank right there. If you can he's going to get on the field right away as soon as by whoever he's drafted, at the very least, if he's not the starting wideout, which I'm confident he will be. And he's just an elite ball tracker. Being an outstanding punt returner, he's good on deep balls. Coach, there's so much to like about Luther Burden III. He's got to work on some things, though. What do you see?
Well, he's fast, but he's not the fastest. He's more twitchy and explosive. He's more of a twitch and explosive guy. That's why he's such a good punt returner. He can really kind of make those nuanced moves and create a little separation and go and then run with some angles and do some different things. But he's not the most electric, fast guy, and he's only 5'11". So, guys of that kind of frame typically are burners. He's quick and twitchy, but not necessarily fast. Middle of the field is where he's pulled up his drops. He got 5.09 is very good. That's a good drop rate. You would qualify him as having good hands. However, that middle of the field, that traffic area, a spot where the Lions have lived under Ben Johnson, and then I would think Rome Odunze and the crowd over there, Mr. Moore and those guys over there in Chicago now. These are guys who are going to catch a lot of footballs or look to catch a lot of footballs in the middle of the field. And that is a spot where Luther has struggled. So that's a concentration area. And, hey, man, it's violent. It's ugly through there. You can get a lot of big hits. Yeah. But that is a spot where he has struggled, and that could limit in some of his delivery and how they get him the ball. Needs to refine and become a pro route runner. That's something that we're going to say time and time again. But a lot of these, they can't just rely on their athleticism as much as they did in college. But that's something if he does, that's going to help with some of those, dropsies that he's had in the middle of the field. He'll be moving through it so fast that I won't really feel that kind of pressure. He's going to struggle against some good press coverage. Press man is a problem for a lot of guys that, in those first couple of years out of college. They struggle with that elite technique and physicality. But that's the burden that's the burden that Burden's going to have to take on. Is he destined for the slot only? Not initially. They're going to move him around. Like I said, he's got some deep. You said, Drew. He's got a little Debo to him. When he came out of South Carolina, he could play some running back. He could do some different things. Luther Burden's going to get moved around. He can do some of those things as well. And they'll move him, around, alignments and throughout formations. But I think he's a fun prospect to talk about. Definitely going to get his shot through a rookie deal to impact an offense.
I think there's a chance he could go above McMillan.
Oh, yeah. 100% by the diversity of things that he can do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you mentioned they struggle against press coverage, especially right at the line. Who else did in his rookie year was Calvin Johnson. Mm-hmm. And I was shocked. I mean, Calvin Johnson was huge. It took him about first couple, and then after that, it was game over. And he still had over 1,000 yards those seasons even. But physical corners could stop him and take him off stride right at the line and take him off his route. And that kind of washed him out in that sense. And they had to look elsewhere. So it's always something to be concerned about, and even the greatest have struggled with it. So Luther Burden III is going to be a very good NFL receiver. He's another guy who's got a high ceiling. I don't think his floor is as low because of his diversity of his game, coach. I really like him a lot, even though McMillan overall is the more skilled receiver. And if he realizes his ceiling, he's probably the better of the two. But Burden's got a hell of a shot. He's going to be a good one. Our number 3 guy is Matthew Golden, coach out of the University of Texas. He's a 6', 195-pound junior. Accomplishments, Houston native. He transferred from Houston. 4.29 40-yard dash. 4.29 40-yard dash. Speed to burn. 15 touchdowns, including 2 kickoff returns for the Cougars. When he was at Houston, all Big 12 as a kick returner for the Cougars, 9 touchdowns for Texas in 2024, 24 career touchdowns, and a 67% target to catch rate. Coach Matthew Golden has a lot going for him. What do you like about him?
Well, he's a burner extraordinaire. 4.29. That's electric speed. That's top of the program speed in the NFL. And he's a big time talent as a kick returner. He's gonna be out there day one and being a kick returner for a team next year. That is something that you'll see him doing, a feature that he brings to the table that's gonna get him on the field early. Like I said, he's an absolute burner with the ball in his hands, a yak machine. Is capable in very reactive hands. So he's a good receiver. This is not just a guy that's going to go back there and take kicks. Just absolutely blazing speed. He's just like Xavier Worthy in that regard. That was from the University of Texas. That is now a star for the Chiefs. Just that kind of a player. He really can get over the top of the defense. He can climb over the top and be over the and now you're looking at a deep ball and touch away from a big either touchdown or a big long 40, 50, 60, 70 yard completion. He's capable of doing that, on any given play. He can change his pace and exhibits that fluid movement. That's how he can, he shows that in his kick return game. He's got a lot of creativity in his movement, very skillsy guy that way, and his physical ability. And he showed great ability to separate both at Houston for the Cougars and for the Longhorns. So he was great as a receiver as well. He wasn't just a special team, kind of track burner type. He really showed the nuanced skills of a receiver. Super crafty and calculated. And he was a successful fighter, for 50-50 balls. At 6 foot 195, 429 guy, you just think of this burner kind of finesse, speedster. He played some football with some rugged mentality as well. But Drew's got some things. He's got some things that's going to put him down and probably out of the first round, I think. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, Coach, he missed some time to a foot injury and required surgery in 2023. So again, are the medicals clear? I haven't heard a tremendous amount of negative about it, but that doesn't, again, I haven't seen the reports, and who knows. I think Matthew Golden's someone you're going to hear a lot about on draft day night, day one, and you're going to be hearing a lot about him, and whether things get cleaned up or not. Well, in terms of the medicals records, we'll see. Needs to get pro strong, and you'll hear that a lot. We've said it a lot. We'll keep saying it because they're all going to need to get pro strong. And Matthew Golden, not small, but certainly not prototypical receiver size. So yeah, he's going to have to get pro strong. A little too reliant on his pure speed and quickness. But what's good is, he has in his back pocket, he's a crafty route runner. And you talked about that, Coach. So he's going to have to really, really focus on making sure those stay a strength. He's being calculated, being a crafty route runner. He's got to make sure he's working on that, because it's not just going to be quick speed. Because there's so many guys, like you named Sammy Watkins. I mean, what an outstanding receiver out of Clemson. But, in the pros, it ended up being disappointing compared to what you would have thought he was going to bring out of college. So, again, high ceiling, low floor. That's what we're looking at. Not a good blocker. He's got to get better at that. That's a given. But honestly, I think he will. And I think as long as he buys in, and I see no reason why he wouldn't. Because quite frankly, you don't stay on the field very long if you don't block downfield. Honestly, you think about a guy like Jamison Williams, he's not you wouldn't train, he's not like a tactician when he blocks, but he's a willing blocker, and he gets in the way, and he's an effective blocker. He's just not the prototype blocker, but he does his job, and he's willing to do it. There's no reason any receiver on an NFL team now shouldn't be willing to do that. He's just got to get better at it. I don't think it's a matter of whether he wants to. He's just got to get better. Career drop rate now just south of 10%, and that's much higher than most of the prospects we're going to talk about. He's got to work on that. Again, that's technique in timing, and you got to work at it. Look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think, what is it, Coach? About 200 reps at practice off the jugs machine.
Something like that,
yeah. So I mean, he's got to work on it. He needs physical and technical refinement to succeed in the NFL. Ultimately, is what I'm really saying. And then again, is he the next Xavier Worthy, or will he take some time to develop? That's a question. And again, a lot of this all ties in, Coach. So I hear what you're saying. I had initially thought of him as a middle day one guy, but there's a chance he could slip out if some of these issues we're talking about here kind of come to fruition, or rise to the top. Yeah, it could put him out on day one. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where the value is. I mean, he's an electric kick returner. I just don't see a wide receiver one on day one type guy here. I do not see that. I see an accent, a wide receiver two, and a kick returner. drafting that in the first round. I mean, there's some teams that might see that. If he's going in the first round, he's going to be on a good football team. I think he's going to go late if he does. But I like him maybe as an early day 2 guy.
That's a very good point.
That's where I see Matthew Golden. Our number 4 wide receiver comes from The Ohio State University. His name is Emeka Egbuka. Been there for a while, been doing some things for several years now. 6'1", 205-pound graduate student. He's in his 4th year, Drew. He must have came in with quite a few transfer dual enrollment and AP credits because he was able to get things done in 3 years and be a graduate student in year 4. He's a 5-star prospect from Steilacoom, Washington. So he came from the West Coast, 4'3", 40. So there's another burner type athlete here. 4-time All Big Ten player, 3-time All Academic Big Ten, 2021 freshman All-American. He was a member of that national championship team this past year. 2,868 career receiving yards, 26 career TDs, 205 career receptions. Emeka Egbuka is a big-time decorated, prolific football player out of Columbus, Ohio, Drew.
Yeah, coach, and he's been around guys, like Garrett Wilson, and such, and
Marvin Harrison, Smith and Jackson, Smith and Jigba. I mean, he's played with some good football players.
Yeah, he never. I wouldn't say he was outshined. He always was prominent. Egbuka was somebody you always thought of. He was well thought of, even amongst all of those great players. So that's a testament to him. A 5.5% drop rate on 205 receptions. That's outstanding stuff there, coach. Tremendous speed and nuanced route forms, and it's a lethal blend. I mean, his route running is really smooth, but man, he can find that he's got some quickness to him, and look out when he can just turn it on, and he's tough to compete with. Big time special teams player and experienced in all facets. He can do it all on special teams. Plays hard and physical at a very fast speed. He has long speed to get over the top, and that's what I'm talking about. He leaves guys in the dust, and he hits another gear after the catch. So right there, he's a yak guy. He's a big time yak guy, coach. There's a lot to like about Egbuka, and there's a very high ceiling. But what are we kind of concerned about?
Well, he had a dip. He had a dip last year, and he may have been a guy that would have even left last year. I mean, he was on draft boards, early day 2 last year before he decided to come back. But he missed a lot of time last year with an ankle injury, and it was kind of a thing that got him away from playing football at times. So it didn't really affect him this year, but he missed quite a bit of time with an ankle injury. And when you're playing at this high level, injuries from the past typically oftentimes come back in some way, shape, or form. So that would be something to watch. He's 6'1", 205. He does not have a real dynamic catch radius. Ball's got to get there. Now, he's playing in a league where that's the expectation anyway. But the ball does have to get there. Making plays in the NFL he's not the most adept tracker. He's also not the most adept blocker. There are other players that have put forth a little bit more effort, and those are some things that can be, he can be kind of barked into doing a little bit better, so to speak, by your fellow teammates and your coaching staff. But that's something he's definitely going to have to improve. Yeah, those are things you're going to have to get better. Doesn't have a lot of experience with the press man because you had Marvin Harrison and you have Smith this past year, the true freshman, taking a lot of that press man on the at the X spot. He lined up at the Y and the Z a lot. So he doesn't have a lot of experience with that. So that's going to be an adjustment as well too. At 6'1", 205, he's a sturdy kid, but that's a modest frame in the NFL. That is a modest frame in this league. So, physicality could be an adjustment for him. And he plays at a very physically high rate of speed. That and to conclude kind of things with Emeka Egbuka, when you play that hard and that fast, you just subject your body to a lot of wear and tear. And in this league, it will eat you up. And that would be my biggest concern, Drew, with Emeka Egbuka. And because I really like him. I mean, I really like him. If somehow he was wearing Honolulu blue and silver and was part of the future wide receivers, is a luxury pick, I mean, I would be very intrigued. But I do worry about his longevity.
Yeah. So, I mean, in that sense, he's not really a risky pick in the sense, as long as you're confident he's going to get through his rookie deal first 4 or 5 years. But yeah, with the physicality he plays at, yeah, I mean that could be tough. So that is a concern always.
He could be a part of a real successful duo in the NFL. There's no two doubts about it.
Yeah, I think it's similar. We were talking about with Golden. If there's a good team that has a luxury to take him in the first round, it could happen, but likely early day 2 is what I would say. But I think Ibuka could be in late day 1, depending on how things shake out. He's got day 1 talent. I'm not doubting that. It's just a matter of there's teams with other needs, like our Lions. So we'll see. Now we got Alik Ayumanor from Stanford, 6'2", 210-pound redshirt sophomore, coach, our number 5 prospect. And he's from Medicine Hat, Alberta. Normally we talk about folks in the WHL or the OHL.
Hockey league guys.
Yeah, exactly. No, Ayumanor is from Medicine Hat, so that's cool. He prepped at Deerfield Academy in Massachusetts. I lived up in Gardner, and that was a beautiful area. North of Worcester, coach. That was, and I'm familiar with Deerfield. That's outstanding. He ran a 4.4 440, outstanding 38.5-inch vertical leap, just over 10.5-inch broad jump. 2023 freshman All-American, 2023 All Pac-12, and 2023 All ACC. 125 receptions in 2 years. Ayumanor is a very nice player, coach, out of Stanford. What do you like about him?
Yeah, and as a mispronounce, he's a 2024 All ACC player. So he's one of those guys that got in each league the last couple of years.
Yeah,
he can really do things down the field. He makes a lot of plays down the field, which in this league, those chunk plays, those 20-yard gains, those are field flippers, and that can get your offense in business. Another guy's a zone killer with a great catching radius. We talked about Emeka Egbuka, who's kind of limited with his catch radius. But, Alik Ayumanor has a bigger catching radius. He can track and do things and really make zone defensive coverage an impossibility against him. He's got great body control. And he's a winner in the red zone. Made a lot of plays inside the 20-yard line. Very crafty route runner. That's something that he, he's very highly technically coached in. Probably dating back, throughout his college and obviously dating back to his Deerfield Academy and his time back in Canada. We have a guy that was, a native of British Columbia on the Lions, trying to make his stake in the offensive line. Here's, Alik Ayumanor, as a wide receiver. He's a great blocker. He's physical in the run game. He's got great frame for the NFL, 6'2", 210. You can just kind of see his build is a little bit bigger and broader than some of the last few prospects we've featured. He does like the middle of the field. He goes in there, comfortably. And he is also a yak threat. He gets that football. He wants to try to get through, past the pylons and across the goal line. So, that's his mentality. He can bail out QBs with a, pretty impressive catching radius. And that's something that, across the board is going to get him some intrigue. Drew, what are the things that have Alik Ayumanor probably looking as a day 2 prospect?
Yeah, coach, he has great speed, but modest twitch and explosiveness. So kind of like T-Mac we were talking about earlier, similar in that regard. He may struggle against good press coverage initially, again, like a lot of receivers will. Very few don't, but the good ones and the great ones are able to adjust rather quickly. But initially, yeah, he's going to struggle. Must become an elite route runner. Now, he's a very good route runner, and he's very crafty. But again, he's going to be facing a lot, even more nuanced defenses and stronger physical players. So he's going to have to figure that out on the fly. Speed and strength haven't always translated to getting open at Stanford. So, when you look on film, sometimes he had some difficulty in that regard. His catch radius really helps him in that sense. But, if you look on film, you can see that didn't always translate on tape. 8.7% drop rate means modest hands. Now, what I will say, and I don't like bailing guys out on issues because that's got to improve. But he goes up the middle a lot. Exactly, and he goes up the middle a lot. And it is what it is, but that's got to improve. Certainly in the NFL, it's going to be even more dangerous in the middle. So he's going to have to get that locked up. He's going to have to earn the trust with his hands. There it is. I mean, if a quarterback calls your number and you can't deliver, they're going to look elsewhere because there's a lot of eager hands that are sticky and want that football. Will drops be something that haunts him in the NFL? Well, that's the whole key. That's kind of the linchpin, right, Coach? I mean, if he can prove he's reliable, he's got a skill set. He reminds you of somebody, right?
Well, I mean, I just think he does kind of have that Josh Reynolds, kind of in that Tim Patrick type of play style. I mean, that's he's that kind of football player. That's really who he is. And there's a couple of other guys that I think are more reminiscent of some other people too. So I mean, in that regard, if the Lions were, this is another guy that has been mentioned as somebody that they like. They like his his effort as a run blocker. They like his frame. They like him. The 8.7 drops. Once you start getting north of 6.5 into that 7 number,
starts to become a concern.
Yeah, it's just kind of like we could look at a lot of other numbers in a lot of other sports and translate it. That you're starting to kind of get into a category where that's not what you want to see. You get into the 8s and 9s, and you get north of 10. That's problematic. Now you do bring up a good point. I mean, it is a metric. It doesn't tell the whole story. Do a lot of these things take place in contested catches in the middle of the field where balls were jarred out? Yeah, you can't necessarily put all of those drops on Alec Manor because of the manner in which they were drops.
Yeah.
But I did the same thing with Burden, with Luther Burden. But nonetheless, that is a concern. We'll see. We're going to see him drafted on day 2.
Yeah, I agree, Coach. Definitely. Who's our number 6 guy?
We're talking about Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, the University of Mississippi, 6'3", 210, big-bodied kid, a senior. He's our number 6 receiver, Drew, out of the state of Louisiana, Lafayette, Louisiana, transferred from Louisiana Tech, where he was a real good receiver for the Bulldogs. 38.5-inch vertical, 10-foot 5-inch broad jump. He was a 2-time All-Conference USA selection for Louisiana Tech. And he was a 2024 All-American at Ole Miss, 2-time All-SEC player for the Rebels, 220 career receptions, 29 career receiving touchdowns. Trey Harris is a football player, Drew. He is a football player.
Yeah, lots to like here, Coach. He's a high point and 50-50 ball extraordinaire. I mean, his leaping ability and his height and his athleticism. He's great on 50-50 balls, tremendous ball tracker, and he has a taste for the deep ball. And he's just got that frame. He's got that look on. You watch him on film, you can see it right away. It jumps off the tape. A solid 6% drop rate speaks to natural pass catching ability, and that's what Coach was saying. Anything north of 6, up in the 7 range, that can be an issue. But if you're at 6 or lower, you're in good shape, and that's where Trey Harris is. He made a lot of big plays in big moments, so he's a guy that likes the spotlight, and he's able to perform as such, and that's a good thing. He wants to make plays. He's a physical, tough blocker. Love seeing that. Love hearing that. Fluid, creative movement skills, and it shows up in his route running. And he really is a red zone wizard because of the way he can run routes, and because on contested balls or high point, Coach, he's outstanding. Trey Harris has a tremendously high ceiling. What are we concerned about?
Well, he press man coverage has been rough on him. It's been rough on him. And he's played in a league where they're, some of the most elite guys, doing it, play. But, he's gotten rerouted, knocked off of his route through some physical press man coverage. He's not as polished of a route runner as some of these other prospects. Now, he's a great ball tracker. He wants the football. So when balls are thrown his way, it really looks like he's not doing, great effort in running a route to get there while he's tracking for the football. What kind of a route does he do when the eyes are looked away from him? What kind of movement is he doing there? What is he selling, in the play and in the formation? Those are things that have to improve. And it's expected of a pro wide receiver. He's way too, relying on that athleticism and physicality. And these big gun athletes, they oftentimes are. It's just kind of like in the movie Top Gun. They're the hot shot, pilots. had to be they had to be reeled in. These top shot athletes, it's the same thing at wide receiver in the NFL. He's not tremendously fast. He's very athletic, but is he burner fast? He's 6'3", 210. He's a bigger kid, but no, he's not got that great over the top speed necessarily. He's got to refine his technique in all of his facets. All those areas those nuances need to get better, because he lacks some of that twitch and that explosion and that speed and that transition to clear zones like some others. He doesn't quite have that. So does he have wide receiver ceiling or wide receiver even? I think he does. I think he does personally. Will he get there? It's not probably going to be a guy. He's not going to probably be Brian Thomas. He's probably not going to be that guy that's just all of a sudden who is he? Could Trey Harris be Brian Thomas 2-3 years from now? He could be. But he is going to take some time to grow. I think there's just that much raw elements to his game, Drew.
Yeah, I agree, Coach. Solid day 2 guy, no question. But he'll need to work.
Day 1 talent though.
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree with you on the ceiling. Yeah, he's got potential to be a great one. At number 7, we got Jaden Higgins, coach out of Iowa State University, the Cyclones, 6'4", 215-pound senior from South Miami, Florida. He was transferred from Eastern Kentucky. His wingspan 6'7" 3/8". That's pretty good. 39-inch vertical leap. That's pretty good. 10.9 broad jump. That's really good. 13 touchdowns and an All-Atlantic Sun at EKU. And last year, he's an All-American at Iowa State. 2-time All-Big 12 with the Cyclones. 227 career receptions and coached 28 career touchdowns. Very productive, very talented Jaden Higgins at wide receiver. What do you like about him?
Big, long frame, 6'4", 215 pounds, and he's alignment versatile. You can move him into the slot. You can move him off onto the Y. He can line up and be your X guy. He has a minuscule 3% drop rate. He is a literal football vacuum. He catches the football, and his catch radius rivals Tataroa McMillan's. It's pretty impressive. That broad jump and that vertical speak to those kinds of things. He can, and he's 6'4" with over really a small forward, stretch 4 in basketball wingspan at 6'7", 3/8. I mean, that's really impressive. So he's another zone killer guy that really is going to force you into man coverage, just because he's able to get open in those zones. He's got great timing and tempo, creative mover, really speaks to his ability to get open and catch the football and see the football as well as he does. Very agile and nimble guy. He can produce the yards with the football in his hands. This is not just a possession player. He can make plays after the catch. And he was just a model of consistency, both for Eastern Kentucky and for Iowa State. Drew, I mean, this is another player of somehow he was towards the Lions somewhere, and we had an opportunity to get him, and we did. I'd be very, very pleased. What are the things that really are things that he needs to work on?
Yeah, Coach, just doesn't have a ton of long or linear speed, so he's not that burner guy. He's got more of that possession type, but he's not strictly that. He can get open, in space, but he's not going to stretch the field necessarily as much as others will. Going to struggle getting over the top, not physical as a blocker, and that's got to improve. So he's a willing blocker, which is good, but he's got to get physical. I think he can be coached up, but he's coming. That's on his resume, so he's got to make that happen. A bit long strided and tight hip. Again, that speaks to how he just doesn't have that long linear speed. He's not the most physical presence in contested areas. Now, he has amazing hands and athletic ability, but he's not the most physical guy. So can he get stronger? Yeah, I would say he could, but he's going to have to. Needs to refine his technique and match the physical response of the NFL. Needless to say, if you're struggling at any level in college, you're going to struggle in the NFL with it. It's got to get stronger. Can he get into a number 2 wide receiver type role early, or will he need more time? And that's the question. I think it's going to depend on the situation, Coach. He may benefit more from being a number 3 initially, which in a lot of cases is a starter, because most NFL teams, including our Lions, they'll have 3 receiver sets quite often. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he can become like that number 2 and be part of real like an elite duo earlier in his career. This is a guy that, out of this draft class, I could see him being a producer, even if he's drafted in day 2 somewhere. He possesses some traits with that length, with his drop rate, with his ability to line up all over the place. To be a guy that could be drafted on day 1, towards the second half of it. He is a likely day 2 football player, just based off of how many edge rushers and O-linemen and defensive tackles that we have in this draft that are pretty exceptional and are going to have a big run on those early. That's probably going to push him into day 2. But I do see him as a wide receiver 2 type for a good stretch in the NFL, as long as he can stay healthy.
Yeah, I agree with you. Totally agree with you, Coach. He's got some definite potential to be a really an all-pro level receiver in the NFL, no question. Who we got at 8, Coach?
We've got Jack Beck, wide receiver out of Texas Christian University, 6'2", 215-pound senior. Another kid out of Louisiana. Another kid out of Lafayette, Louisiana. We talked about a couple of prospects ago. Jack. He is also from Lafayette, Louisiana. Jack is the brother of Tiger Beck. Tiger Beck was one of the victims of the New Year's Eve, New Year's Day attack in New Orleans. His brother was a wide receiver for Princeton University, just so happened to be celebrating the New Year on the French Quarter, and was in that pool of people that was driven into. So that kind of brings Jack Beck, some unfortunate notoriety, but he played with a lot of inspiration and heart and did his brother proud, had an unbelievable senior year for TCU. Part of 2 state championships in football and 3 state championships in basketball at St. Thomas More in Louisiana. So he was a big-time winner in high school. 19 reps on the bench at 225, Drew. That's pretty good as a wide receiver. Yeah. 10 feet, 5-inch broad jump. He led LSU in receptions in 2021 as a true freshman with 43. So, I mean, this is a kid that did some damage there. And then all of a sudden he kind of found himself struggling to get on the field. At 2024, he was an All-American at TCU. 2024, All Big 12 for the Horned Frogs. And it was a 66% target completion rate kid, catch rate kid. So Jack Beck, lots to like here, Drew. Another, big, tall, physical specimen. Yeah,
definitely. Really an astonishing 1.6% drop rate. I mean, that's unheard of, but that's where he's at. Jack Beck doesn't drop footballs. 68% contested catch rate. Just sticky hands. Literal football vacuum. Tremendous body control. Obviously, the best hands in the draft, bar none. And it's really not even close. He's really that good hands-wise. Tremendous possession receiver, a third down wizard. He finds the sticks, and that's what's critical. Yeah, you can run the out, you can make the catch till you find the sticks. Jack Beck does. He's nuanced in movement skills. He's very physical. He's a very physical responder to press man coverage like that. He's not small. 6'2", 215. He's got some pop. Physical, tough tackle after the catch. He's a determined young man when he gets the football. And really, he's a zone killer, another zone killer. He finds the spaces, he finds the soft spots. He doesn't drop the football, Coach. Jack Beck's got a lot going for him, but he's got to work on some things, doesn't he?
Not elite speed, not the most explosive athlete. He does a lot of things through his physicality, which is great. That's the sign of a good football player. But when you live on it, that's like saying you're going to punch yourself through the heavyweight division in the 1970s. Good luck. Good luck. It's gonna take its toll on you. Yeah. And those are some things that are going to be long-term concerns for Jack Beck. He's got to refine himself as a route runner. We said that time again about a lot of guys. That's just something that the whole class is going to have to get better at. Really, honestly, he's had kind of an inconsistent development pattern. Like we said, Drew, he led LSU in receptions as a freshman, and then as a sophomore, he barely could get on the field. And he was transferring to TCU. So he's a little inconsistent that way. Mm-hmm. So he's a bit of an up and down performer. Doesn't possess the next level long speed to climb over the top of an offense. So he's going to be kind of an underneath possession guy. He's a mediocre blocker, which doesn't bode well for a possession guy and a slot receiver. So it's going to take him some time and some developmental time and space to get better. But I'm rooting for Jack Beck. There's a lot to like there, and the kid's going to get his shot. And wouldn't be surprised if we hear his name this year in the regular season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Coach. There's a lot to like there. He's likely he's day 3, but he's going to be, I think, or on the earlier side. There's too much to like there.
Yeah, he could wind up on day 2.
Yeah, you're right, because I mean, receiver is a position that when there's a run on them, look out. I mean, you could see 6 in a row go. I mean, so
1.6 drop rate.
That's outstanding. Yep. There's no doubt he's a great player. So we'll see. Here you got your dark horse candidate, Coach.
Yeah, I think this is yet another day 2 player. This is a guy that has been compared to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drew. Very, very similar. So we're talking about a 3rd round, maybe even a 4th round, early day 3 guy out of Coconut Creek, Florida. He prepped at 2 powerhouse programs in the state of Florida, St. Thomas Aquinas. Then he went to the public schools at Deerfield Beach. So he played at 2 big time baller institutions down there in places that are big time high schools for football. 4.45 40, 17 reps on the bench at 225. So another strong kid at 5'10", 209. He's a 2024 consensus All-American across the board. 2-time All-ACC guy, 200 career receptions on the nose, 2,844 career receiving yards, 21 career TDs. 90.5 of his 2024 reps came out of the slot. So this is a true slot, Drew. And then his target catch rate was 72%. So he had the commiserate numbers that way as a guy that plays a slot. So under 5% drop rate. He checks that box. He's got good, solid hands. He's a true slot player. So he's a nightmare in zone. Plays very strong for his size, and he's very quick and explosive out of his stance. Got open that way. What are some things? Well, he does not have much of a catch radius. It's not what he's going to bring to the table. He's going to bring, great route running and good hands to the table. His small frame presents some difficulty against press man. So, he's going to be in the slot, and they're going to have to move him around if people want to try to do that to him. Will the physicality of the NFL be an issue? I would like to say no. I think Xavier Restrepo's got a real good shot at being a player and being a player early. Drew, who's your dark horse?
Yeah, I'm going with Savion Williams out of TCU, Coach, and a big reason why is he's a big guy, 6'5", 225-pound senior. He's from Marshall, Texas. He had a 1.52 10-yard split, so he's got some quicks. He's got a 40-inch vertical leap, 10.5-foot broad jump. He benched a max of 355, and he squatted 600 pounds. He's a strong, dedicated athlete in the weight room, no question. He played quarterback in high school. He's 2-time All-Big 12. He has a 68% catch and target rate. That's outstanding. Over 2,000 career total yards, 21 career touchdowns. He aligned as a running back in 2024. He accounted for 6 rushing touchdowns and over 300 yards rushing last year for TCU, for the Horned Frogs. And he caught a TD pass, rushed for a TD, and threw a TD pass in his career at TCU. He's pretty multifaceted, a tremendous athlete, excellent release technique, and he's a yak extraordinaire and can really climb a defense in a hurry. He's a very athletic, quick guy. His weaknesses, his issues, a 10% plus drop rate. The hands are a big question, and he's a poor blocker on tape. He's got to get better. Very raw technically, and the question is, and it's legitimate, what is Savion Williams in the NFL? He's, in my mind, Coach, he's truly more of that kind of boomer bust guy. If he can get the drops he's taken care of and just become a more refined blocker, because physically, there's no doubt he could be a very good blocker downfield. He's got a hell of a ceiling, but his floor could be the UFL if he doesn't shore those things up. So that's where I'm at with Savion Williams. Coach, and that's right where we go. We got about a minute here to go. Your final thoughts on the wide receiver group as a whole?
There's even some more. There's even some more guys that are going to go on day 2 that we didn't talk about, and through day 3 as well. And some guys are going to impact rosters. It's a passing league, so receivers, there's plenty of guys to replenish the pool, and we're going to see a bunch of them. Going to be a few big time players that we just talked about too.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It's such a deep group. It always is. Even when you talk about fantasy football, you always know you can wait on the receiver till maybe round 3 because you're going to get a number 1. and it's going to be a legitimate number one guy. I mean, no matter what team you're drafting from. So it's a deep group, and it's a passing league, to your point. But Coach, great job as always. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Don't forget to hit the like buttons on the videos. We really appreciate the responses. Thanks for checking us out. And, we're just happy to do it. And we will be talking to you next week. We'll be covering, we got about 3 more position groups before that mock draft, right before the NFL draft on April 24th or 25th. One of those, I think it's the 24th on that Thursday in Green Bay. So for Coach Shield, I'm Drew. Take care. Talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Follow us on YouTube so you don't miss an episode at the Sports Peninsula Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter X. Just look for @SportsP Podcast, and follow us to keep up on sports around the great state of Michigan and beyond. You can also catch our show every Saturday night at 7 p.m. on the ESEN Network channel as part of Roku. When you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one, Sports Peninsula Podcast.